Welcome back to another episode of the Commander Experience podcast. I am one of your hosts, I'm Brian.
And I'm Jacob. Today we're going to talk about our favorite cards from 2025, which isn't a commander, or at least in the way we're going to use them. They could be legendary, so.
Cards that we're not playing in the command zone.
Yeah, that's better.
Let's break it down.
Talking about cards that are legendary, but we don't really want to play in the command zone. I will start out with a maybe obvious one, but I really want to talk about it. It's a Wan Shi Tong Librarian from Avatar. And once again, Blue gets the long end of the stick and basically gets just a straight up better version of a white card in Archivist of Ogma.
Yeah, we just covered this card in our Avatar episodes, and if you haven't seen that one, you can find it in the channel. But this is just such an obvious card to mention in this episode also, because this is probably the cards, along with another one you're going to talk about a bit later, the card we're going to see the most in the meta, I think. So we just have to mention it here.
Yeah, I slotted it into some decks last week when we played, and it pretty much overperformed, even though I had high hopes. So it was pretty crazy. I played it in one of the games where I had some extra mana lying around, so I played it for 4 mana. And drew a card immediately, and when my next turn came up, I had I got 3, so I had a 5/5 flying vigilance creature that also drew me 3 cards in play. It was pretty crazy. It just started hitting people and also all the cards. So yeah, insane card.
It's very hard not to just put into all your blue decks. And I think just to mention it here, I found out that there are actually decks you're not going to play it in. But it is, of course, very specific decks. I have my Green Goblin deck, and I actually chose to leave it out of that deck because usually I want to have cards I can exploit when I'm trying to win, and Wan Shi Tong is just not as great a fit in that deck as other cards are.
Yeah, and even in a deck like that where it isn't the greatest fit, it still draws you 1 card on cast because you get 2 off the cast, so yeah.
Yeah. It's just 1 blue pip too expensive in that deck.
Yeah.
If you want to optimize. Of course, you could run it and still be happy with it. But there's always the exception. But yeah, it's pretty much just a staple.
Yeah, and I think it's especially because on our pod that it scales with mana cost, and we have a lot of decks that makes 20 mana, and sometimes I don't know what to do with it. And suddenly your draw engine is also the one that draws you the cards to go off, so pretty insane.
And not only that, we do have a lot of decks that are actually making infinite mana. And one of the decks that comes to mind is, of course, as always, my Muldrotha deck, because one of the things you actually need in Muldrotha is something to do with all the infinite mana I create with Lion's Eye Diamond and Displacer Kitten, and making all that infinite mana or the exact amount you want to do to draw your whole deck is pretty easy. And that's just another thing it can do.
Yeah, it being on a creature is very relevant.
My first card I want to talk about is also a card. We're actually not trying to do a repeat episode of our Avatar, but my first card is Avatar's Wrath. If you saw our Avatar episode, you know that we were, or at least I was, really excited about this new board wipe design that they made for this card. And that's one of the reasons, because one, I think it's unique. It's very unique in what it does. And it's also the first sorcery board wipe, not the first, but close to the first, where you have a real advantage when you cast it, meaning that you have this Dranith Magistrate-ish effect where your opponents cannot cast cards from their graveyard or exile. They cannot cast their commanders. And even the creatures that you hit with the Avatar's Wrath that they can cast for 2, they can't even do that for the next turn cycle. And in Bracket 4 where we play, it's being set back like this for a turn cycle can pretty much mean that you're winning the game. It definitely gives you a real tempo advantage, I think. And I just love the design, and I hope they're going to create more board wipes like this.
Yeah, it's very cool. And also because it has a lot of play on top of it just being good. I at least I like the idea of doing it in blink decks and then replaying your whole board yourself and doing it with a Dranith in play and suddenly now it's not only for one turn, they can't do it again, and yeah, trying to abuse all the other stuff on the card. So that's also very interesting for me.
And it just supports so many things. Of course, the most obvious one is blink decks, where you can recast your creatures that has an enters ability. But there's also small stuff like maybe protecting your commander until next turn, because you don't really have anything to do. So now you cast Avatar's Wrath. You exile your own commander and not choosing that one to protect. So now your opponents can't even remove your commander, and they cannot cast their creatures or their commanders. And now you make sure you have your own commander ready when it's your next turn. Of course, he's going to cost 2, but maybe that's worth it if you don't have any other sort of protection. I mean, I just think this board wipe does so many things for 4 mana.
I agree. Yeah, we talked about shortly last week where you wasn't there in our usual play day. And I also just mentioned it to one of the other guys that you could just play it in Zephrys and be pretty happy with basically exiling your own board and just playing, as you said, as a Teferi's protection. That's a bit worse. And then just win on your next turn. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Seems great. I'm really looking forward to see what it does. And
yeah.
I hope it's strong enough, because we need some strong board wipes.
We do.
In our power level. So.
And I do think they are a necessary evil in some plays.
Yeah.
And I'm not really running any board wipes unless they're one-sided or instant speed right now. And as I also mentioned in our Avatar episode, this is going to be the first one I'm including at sorcery speed.
Yeah.
What is your next one?
Next up, I'll go with another obvious one. I'll keep the exciting one for last. So watch out, guys. So here I'm going to mention a real interesting card. Let's see, Badgermole Cub.
What's that, Jacob? Can you read it out loud?
Yeah.
I don't know what that is.
Oh, it's crazy. It does a lot of things. So yeah, if you play Magic, you have heard of this card by now, even though it's pretty new. I will say, though, that even though I joke a bit, I am also still pretty kind of surprised about how good it is, because when I read it, I was like, that's pretty good. I see what it does. Kinnan is crazy, so kind of a Kinnan that's a bit worse because it's only creatures. But then I started kind of including some of the decks, and I'm like, wait up, this is actually so stupid, because it also makes one more creature, and we are in a meta right now. At least I'm playing a lot of Gaia's Cradle. So suddenly now that you have a creature that create 2 creatures and also give you more mana, and also activates your Gaia's Cradle, and also makes it so that you can sacrifice that land and get it back. It was actually last play session I had a Orcish Lumberjack in play. Turn 1, turn 2 I played Badgermole, animated a land, tapped that, and Orcish Lumberjacked it, so it died. So I got 4 mana from my Lumberjack and 2 mana from the land on turn 2. So suddenly I made 6 mana from one land with Orcish Lumberjack. Like, Jesus Christ. It was so crazy.
I do think that is sort of Magical Christmas Land.
Yeah, it is.
But of course, it just showcases the power. There's, of course, the obvious synergy where you also do it with a fetch land and crack the fetch land.
Yeah, it's so strong. And also, just without thinking about it really, I was like, okay, it's another creature for the Revi that makes 2 creatures and also enables some combos in that deck. And I also put it into Tayam because it actually also gives counters, so I can use the counters in that deck. And also, I don't know. It seems like if you play creatures, it's probably pretty decent.
Yeah.
Yeah, just the rate the card was literally just 2 mana, make 2 creatures. In decks that wants to make creatures, that is already an insane rate for 2 creatures for 2 mana. So yeah, all the other stuff on top is just insane.
Yeah.
So
I do think it's safe to say that, like Wan Shi Tong, that this is the biggest stable in the Avatar set. I do think Wan Shi Tong and Badgermole is the 2 creatures or the 2 spells we're going to see the most.
Yeah, which is a bit surprising for me at least. Maybe I just underrated a bit, but I was like, okay, this is good in very specific decks. And then I started to put it into my decks and was like, maybe this is just good.
Yeah.
Overall, so yeah.
My second one is Tezzeret, Cruel Captain, a 3 mana generic planeswalker that can go fetch an artifact. And yeah, I just think this is an auto-includes in so many decks. Even in mono green decks where you want Skull Clamp or something like that, where you're not able to tutor it in green. There's I'm using it in my Green Goblin deck, because in my Green Goblin I can discard him, play him for 1 mana, then I can search for Lion's Eye Diamond that costs 0, so now I'm up 2 mana just by casting him. There's my Emery deck where it can fetch all my relevant mana rocks, mana vault, and Soul Ring, and whatever I need. Yeah, I think in bracket 4 where we have so many cheap, fast mana, I mean, that's the floor. Go get a Soul Ring, that's the floor.
Yeah.
And then it just get more and more crazy from there.
Yeah, a card that where the floor is basically 1 mana, you have 2 extra mana on your next turn. It's pretty stupid.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just seems like every text on this card is relevant. Let's say it was just the -3 that was good, but what makes him insane is basically every one of them is pretty decent. Ultimate is kind of iffy, but it does something, and it's not that hard to get there if you want to get there with the right deck. So
yeah, and let's say, I mean, most of our decks where we need it, in many of our decks, we're running Mana Vaults. Finding Mana Vault with this one, casting Mana Vault, now he gets a counter because that's his static ability. But now you can tap Mana Vault in your next turn and untap it with this if you don't want to tutor any more artifacts. Yeah. I mean, that's 6 mana for the next turn.
Yeah, so suddenly you made a 3 mana card make 6 mana on your next turn.
Yeah.
And also tutor the card that enabled that as well. Yeah. It's insane.
And you can also get all the keys, which I think I've done in more than one Emery game. I already had the Mana Vaults and the Soul Rings, and now I just tutored up one of the keys instead.
Yeah, I think if there wasn't already a untap artifact theme deck, this is enable that. If there wasn't one already, just untap your 1 ring, untap whatever.
Yeah,
it's pretty crazy. And it being 3 colors mana, as we all know, is insane because it's pretty easy to play very early. In the right deck, you can play it on turn 1 pretty easily.
Yeah.
And then suddenly he just grows bigger when you cast your artifacts. So
yeah, having an Ancient Tomb and a Mox in hand, or something like a Soul Ring and a Mox. I mean, either of those combination, and you cast this turn 1. Yeah. And who's then going to remove it before you cast all your other artifacts, and it gets more counters, and you can tutor the next thing. And I do think that's its power. I mean, it's a bit over the top for me that it get loyalty counters from casting artifacts, because you're already probably putting this in artifact decks anyway, and it's kind of protecting itself this way. And I mean, finding Lion's Eye Diamond and Mana Vault, and I mean, it's just so powerful.
Yeah, and it also seemed like they kind of forgot all the checks and balances, because not only does it get the loyalty counters on artifacts, but it's on Inter as well, so you can do it on all the treasure generation and all that. Yeah. So it's not even cast, it's just everything. And as we all know, artifacts decks have a tendency to just spit out a lot of random 0 mana stuff, because why not? It's free value.
This is not only a card I've added to several of my decks. I've also think it's awesome card design. Maybe it's too powerful for bracket 4, but I do think, to be quite honest, I do think maybe this is too strong. But I will also say that I have missed playing Planeswalkers that does anything and are worth it, because moving up through the brackets, when we started playing, we were probably more between bracket 2 and 3, and now we're at the very top of bracket 4, I think. And by that extent, we are not actually playing Planeswalkers unless we're playing a Super Friends deck, which doesn't exist. You have one, but that's in Karth. And even that deck is probably not strong enough for our part, to be honest. So I have missed Planeswalkers that are worth it. I think this is over the top, but I would like to see more Planeswalkers at 2-3 CMC that just does a little bit of work and are worth it to run, because I like the mechanic of Planeswalkers, to be honest.
Yeah, I do as well.
What is your third and final card? You said you had something exciting for us that wasn't a clear stable.
So here on the last is a bit of more spicy pick that I really want to break in some way, and that is Mardu Siegebreaker. Yeah, it being Mardu is probably why people don't mention it too much, because, you have to play very specific commanders. But when I read this card, I was like, God damn, this sounds so busted. Like, what? Why is no one doing this?
Yeah.
And then I started looking at commanders that tried to abuse it, and I was like, this is why no one is doing this. Mardu commanders is kind of bad for the most part. I'm not really into this effect. I would snap build this deck if it was legendary.
Yeah.
In the command zone would be so much fun.
Yeah, the obvious commanders for this one is, of course, Prismatic Bridge and maybe Reaper King, I would say.
Yeah, Reaper King sounds a lot of fun with this one.
Yeah.
I have really been looking into trying to abuse it in some way. I think that the problem is because it's 4 mana and it's in the 99, you kind of want the payoff to be in your command zone. So the thing that it copies, so to say, is in the command zone. And that's actually kind of hard in those colors. So, but yeah, I'm waiting. I'm patiently waiting to see if they print something that's cool with it. I will say that, the Scarecrow is probably the most interesting one. And I might try it out, but he seems cool.
He does. You told me about this card, and I actually had a Prismatic Bridge deck back then that was built around finding Terrastodon and Agent of Treachery. So when you told me about this card, I slam dunked it into Prismatic Bridge, and I just found out that one, Prismatic Bridge is probably not strong enough for bracket 4, and even though this card was awesome, if you hit this first, it did nothing, and now you are very behind if you weren't already playing Prismatic Bridge. So even in those kind of decks where it seems the most obvious, I don't think it's necessarily fast enough. And the thing I could imagine them also putting it into Reaper King is even when you're in a deck where you can tutor it and set it up perfectly, having Reaper King out, is that really the card you're tutoring for? Because I'm not so sure, to be honest.
Yeah, I would say in Reaper King specifically, I think you just win the quote-unquote win the game because it sees itself, so you get so many triggers at once. So maybe in that deck, because it kind of duplicates the effect. But yeah, I think in most decks, you're not going to tutor for this card, and you have to find it naturally. And then, is it good enough to have a 4-mana card that you're not tutoring for?
Yeah, because there's also the hurdle that is Reaper King costs at least 5 mana. So when are you tutoring for this card? Is that beforehand, and now you have it in hand? Because then you have to cast Reaper King and wait a whole turn cycle.
Yeah.
So there's a timing issue with this also, even when you tutor for it.
Yeah, the dream is definitely a 3-mana commander that has a powerful enters the battlefield effect or not attack trigger, damage trigger. That's what we're really looking for here, and I couldn't really find one, so I'm keeping an eye out to see if they print someone that does it, because I think as soon as they do, it will be so strong.
I do think that you're right about the timing restriction, and I think the best fit would be if you had that 3 CMC commander, if you had that commander with that cost 3 CMC and then play this the turn after. But I do also think that maybe you could fit it into Celis, Rune Knight. She is costing 4 mana, but she also has an Enters effect, where you discard any number of cards and then draw that many cards +1. That would give you a nice card selection, and also maybe even if you had the deck built somewhat up around casting instant speed. Yeah. But I'm not sure if the deck even want to do that. But that was just one of the Mardu commanders that came to mind when talking about Siegebreaker.
Yeah, it is interesting. That's at least a payoff. Like my first thought was, because I have this deck in another version, is a Will the Wise as the payoff, and then you can play the red-green partner, and then you're suddenly in 4 colors, and then you have green as well, so you can actually tutor the Siegebreaker in that deck. I'm just not convinced that after playing a lot of Will the Wise that the ATB effect is powerful enough on Will the Wise to, yeah.
Yeah, also because in that deck you would definitely get Academy Manufacture first.
Yeah, and now you're kind of having another creature that is 4 mana instead of 3 that you want to tutor. I'm not convinced. But yeah, very cool deck. A very cool card, I mean.
Yeah.
The Mardu Siegebreaker.
And there's probably going to come that one commander somewhere down the line where we can circle back to this one. Let's move on to my last one. I'm going to cheat a little bit here because I'm going to mention 2 cards. Because I do think they do sort of the same thing, not quite, but still. But the first one is Consult the Star Charge. I just think that this is such a boring card, but still exciting in that way that it usually does more than one thing. It's like you said earlier, we usually in bracket 4 have access to so much mana, and casting this for just 2 mana to look at 6 card and pick the best. I mean, pick the best in a bracket 4 deck is usually a card that does something. Yeah. And even if you have all that mana that you don't know what to use, then you just pay the kicker cost as well and put 2 cards into hand. I just think this generically is a very good card selection card, and casting it instant speed is really what we want to do in our bracket.
Yeah, I think it's good. I love Dig Through Time. It kind of rhymes with that. It does it in a bit different way, but I love that card, and this card seems like doing some of the same stuff, so seems very good. And you're gonna see a lot of cards. Most of my card draw currently is still engines, but I think this is one of the ones that is very close, because I also play Dig Through Time. Yeah. For the same reason. You see so many cards.
And the other one for me, and this is more a personal thing, I think, because it's sorcery speed, but that is stuck up. But again, we are comparing it to Dig Through Time. Does close to the same thing. It's 3 mana, putting 2 cards into hand, looking at the top 5. I do think it's the very best version of what it does, but it is sorcery speed, and that's a big hurdle to jump in bracket 4.
Yeah, I love to see these cards, because I really want to have some good, what you call them, draw cards now, and these two are, I will say, the best in class so far.
Yeah, and that's a debate we have had in more than one time, because you really love your engines, and I've always been the player that are sort of playing more of these get the value now kind of cards, where they don't do as much over the game as the engines does, but it does what it does right now. And I do think that the more powerful Magic we play in our pod, the more relevant these cards does, because it can mean the difference of you trying to win the game or pass turn.
Yeah.
Where the engine's Ristic Study does most of the time nothing on your own turn.
They help a lot in decks that need to dig. So.
And to state the obvious, this is in my Green Goblin deck, of course, because now it's 1 mana, look at 5, put 2 in hand. So I love it in that deck. But yeah, 2 a bit boring cards on paper, but I just love these kind of effects, and I would love to see more cards like Consult the Star Charts that doesn't necessarily give you card advantage, but more card selection. Yeah. So and in Consult the Star Charts' case, you can actually get card advantage if you pay the kicker cost. So it's a flexible card, and I do think that flexible cards have a tendency to be better than it reads. So I've casted this a few times, and I've been happy with it every time. And that is also in my Green Goblin deck, by the way, because it costs 1 mana.
Yeah, I also like that it has some play. That's always one of the things I'm looking for. So I like the idea of it having it in a lands meta deck, and now you actually look at 15 cards. And I think that's also the kind of decks that kind of want these effects, because they have a tendency to say so much mana and then be like, I don't know what to do with all this mana. But this helps a lot.
Yeah, and I do think that showcase the strength this card has, because I do think that most people read this card and think that's in some sort of land meta strategy deck.
Yeah.
But I do think you can just play this generically, because even turn 2, you may not have had a play on your turn, and now you pass turn and you have this in hand. I will just cast this for 2 mana and look at the top 2 cards, maybe even try to hit my land drop or something like that. I do think that this you'll be happy to cast this at any time during the game.
Yeah, it is pretty flexible in that way. It will also always draw you at least that 1 card if it's real bad. So
anyway, that was the cards we had in mind for 2025. The cards that we have seen the most, I think, at our table, or the cards that have just caught our attention the most. But those are definitely the cards that have been going into the most decks, I think.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to see what you guys have, because I know that I had at least a couple of more cards on my list that I had to cut it down. So I'm looking forward to see if you have some hidden tech out there.
Yeah, please share your favorite cards with us in the comments, and let us know if we've overseen some obvious ones. Also, as always, come join us on our Discord channel. Come talk some Magic with us. Share your deck list, or maybe even get some advice on a deck building list you are doing yourself at the moment. But until next time, thank you for tuning in.
Until next time, thanks for watching.